Warhammer 40K Battlesector is a game I've covered fairly extensively, both on YouTube and on Twitch. Set on Baal Secundus after a Tyranid invasion that devastated the planet, you take charge as Sergeant Carleon, commanding a group of recruits to return Secundus back under the control of the Blood Angels at whatever cost, and unravel how this invasion happened in the first place. Having been sent multiple builds that feature deeper dives into the campaign and unlocking more features, I think I've got a solid grasp of the game, even though I have yet to complete the 20 mission long campaign. What we'll get into in this review of the game is the details of it from various angles, the visuals, which are fantastic by the way, what the campaign entails, including its features, a look at playing the Tyranids and other game modes, and finally my thoughts on the game and if it is worth your time and investment. If you're watching this review and at any point you decide it's the game for you and you or your friends, I highly recommend using the link in the description to purchase it through my Nexus game store. Nexus works directly with developers and publishers to ensure that your game keys are 100% legitimate, and you support this channel, so it's a win-win for everyone. Lastly, I did receive a free pre-release key from Slytherin for the purpose of covering this game, but it will not affect my opinions of the game. With that out of the way, let's dive into Warhammer 40K Battlesector. Several of these points I have made before in other videos, but Battlesector's visuals and audio are always worth mentioning because they do indeed look and sound fantastic for the most part. With very few graphic settings to modify in the game, at its highest settings you see things in dang good detail. Dents and scrapes in your armor, light occlusion and reflection, the texture of the Tyranid skin structures. Even the melee and firearm combat look great for your typical Warhammer 40K game. The units across the board are pretty immersive and create a solid vibe that resonates well with me as I'm playing. The same goes for audio. The voice acting in the game is spot on, futuristic British accents and all.
Carleon, Matano, report.
We have finished securing the place of challenge. The reinforcements were greatly appreciated.
It's not just that, it's the emotions, or lack thereof sometimes, that really play to the characters extremely well, and even without fancy video cutscenes, you grasp the emotion as the campaign unfolds. Battles sound equally as spot on, with the Space Marines' various weapons, explosions, and melee bodily fluid sounds emitted by the Tyranids. For most of the entire game, both visuals and audio are super solid. But not all is sunshine and rainbows. Visually, the maps are rather bare. I mean, I get it, either from the perspective of keeping up with a typical Warhammer tabletop session, or the fact that the whole planet got ravaged by some nasty looking Tyranids. But you can totally still add map details beyond what would be considered standard. I seriously doubt that Games Workshop would have a problem with that, and I do reckon there are bigger plants on this planet other than the tufts of grass present, or perhaps even bits of greenery somewhere. Rock, dirt, and more rock are all that we really see, and some variations in your maps would go a bit further to polish the game. Audio doesn't have too many complaints, namely in the voice lines on both sides of the way. While every Space Marine unit has their own lines, every unit type seems to only have a couple, which does get very repetitive when you're fighting an hour-long battle. And the sound clip of a Tyranid dying rarely changes, so what happens during some epic slaughterhouse turns is the same loud organic dying sound over and over and over, and it wears thin on you pretty quick. The audio issues aren't that big of a deal, but I did want to mention them as it's something that kept popping into my head consistently while playing the missions for the purpose of this review. Aside from those small personal problems I had with the maps and dying aliens, Battlesector still has some of the better visuals and audio in the Warhammer 40K games across all the genres. Battlesector's campaign consists of 20 full missions in single player, again, taking charge of the Blood Angels as they fight to retake their homeworld. As your campaign progresses, you'll add new heroes and units to your roster through your army management system, with units costing you battlefield points just like in the tabletop. This is a very important thing to consider, as each mission will have a specific number of points that you have to stay under. You cannot just field 20 units of the best type every single mission. This leads to both some specialization and mastering of certain troop types. You'll need to understand what each unit can do, both in what their primary weapons do and their special abilities, both of which can be upgraded through the HQ Center we'll get to in a minute. Intercessors and Hellblasters are my absolute go-to in the campaign, and they fill up a majority of slots in my army every single time. An Intercessor's grenade can wipe out a Grunt Tyranid unit in one toss, while my Hellblasters take down the armored boys like Tyrannofex or their warriors. Heroes are equally as important, mainly for their abilities. Each has their own specialization as well, from healing a single unit every turn to giving an area of effect boost to a range of troops, even the capability of healing or protecting mechanized units. There's a lot to consider every single mission, and your army composition does matter. The HQ Center is where the upgrading happens. At the end of each mission, you are rewarded with tokens from completing main and side missions. Those tokens unlock features for both your heroes and the units they use their abilities on. Each hero has their own upgrade tree and therefore allows you to further specialize in said various units. With the aforementioned 2 I primarily use, I focused on those in my tech tree, unlocking new crazy powerful weapons, health boosts to each unit models inside a unit, new abilities, and even just basic stat improvements to melee or ranged attacks. In one of my earlier videos, I mentioned I didn't think you'd ever be able to remotely come close to leveling units appropriately, considering how the campaign rolled out. But as I continue playing for the purpose of this review, it was evident I will indeed fill up a couple of tech trees, which makes me glad to see. There are few things more frustrating than a lack of resources to complete things like a tech tree in a strategy game of this scenario. There's one big old kicker about this campaign that doesn't sit too well with me, and that's the fact we only have one single player campaign. At one point, I swear there were 2 full campaigns, but it appears I misread that information, which is terribly disappointing and honestly, quite frankly, embarrassing. I really wanted 2 campaigns, one for each faction involved in this conflict, as at least most basic strategy games have. A Blood Angel only campaign isn't a bad thing. The campaign and its storyline are quite honestly fantastic, and I'm 100% loving it. But to not see the other side of this planetary war and their motivations does put a pretty big slump in my chest. That doesn't mean there won't be a Tyranid campaign though. They do plan on releasing more campaigns in the future. But as a single player person primarily, who rarely plays skirmishes or multiplayer, I kind of have a hard time justifying the $40 price tag for one single campaign, even if that campaign is 30 hours long, which is kind of my estimate considering the pace I played the campaign so far. Now, even though the Tyranids are not playable in campaign, it doesn't mean you can never play them. You can play with the full roster of Tyranids in Battlesector's other 2 modes, Skirmish Battles and Multiplayer. Skirmish mode is actually pretty robust. You get access to the entire in-game roster for both sides, the ability to customize your armies, just like in the campaign, and a whole host of very tabletop-esque settings to get the exact battle you're looking for, like turn limit, army point limit, and a wide array of map types. I didn't know what to expect with the skirmish mode when I got the preview build, and I'm impressed with what was available. Multiplayer in Slytherin games is always a bit wonky and weird, so I went into the multiplayer menu to see what Battlesectors was like. Multiplayer features 3 types of battles: live, which is your standard mode where both players are online at the same time; asynchronous, where one player plays their turn and then sends it to the other player who can then play their turn at their own convenience; and hot seat, where both players are playing on the same PC system but against each other. The same settings from Skirmish are there too, including different game modes like Extermination and a Conquer Hold Strategic Point system. There's a robustness in both Skirmish and Multiplayer that I can tell Black Lab Games is banking on players really digging in and playing those other 2 modes. These 2 modes will be a fun feature to have and a great encouragement for you and your friends to hop on and play. I do have to say as well, the Tyranids are a bit more complex than the Blood Angels, or maybe it's the organic and more melee-focused gameplay style that threw me for a loop. Again, I have no mode to learn the basics, so going in blind as the Tyranids in skirmish mode, there was a huge learning curve to nail down their playstyle. They are equally as fun though, a little more squishy than their Terran counterparts in ways, but their more elite and massively larger units can pack some serious punches while also having some great abilities. There's only one complaint I have for these other modes, and that's the inability to give your armies a color. This becomes problematic when you're going to play as the same faction, as all of your units are always the exact same color. It's not an issue when you're moving pieces closer to each other at the start of a battle, but once those lines clash, it is quite literally impossible to distinguish who owns what troops. Now, you can cycle through any of your troops via the unit breakdown on the left-hand side, or the button below it to see if anyone has any unused actions, but a much simpler solution would be to just add in a color management tab to, at least at the most basic level, be able to change the color of your army's armor or skin. It's a real bad problem that I see popping up once people get it after release and hop on multiplayer. Since we've covered about all the main points of the game as a whole, it's down to my thoughts on the game, the real review part of the video, I suppose, and I'm a bit conflicted. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time playing this game. It's been a fun campaign, and I'm only halfway through it, unlocking new heroes, new units, upgrading their stats and weapons, learning the optimal setup for myself, and how to utilize your army against literal masses of Tyranids has been a blast. I think for a tabletop style of game, which traditionally doesn't require great graphics or sound quality, or even any form of voice acting, Battlesector stands out among them all, and it especially stands out with those last few mentions in the Warhammer 40K genre, even more so with the strategy subgenre. And while there are some rather in-depth mechanics and gameplay styles present in the game, I can't help but get this feeling that there could be a bit more to just 100% solidify it as a super fantastic addition to the Warhammer 40K world. The battles are very enjoyable, yes, but I find myself doing the exact same setup every battle, executing the exact same strategies regardless of the terrain or the enemies facing me. The objective is always to exterminate. There is no other mission type, not like in multiplayer. I'd love to get a, drop pod in, get this very specific thing with minimal casualties, then get airlifted out mission, or a covert op mission where you have a super small number of points at hand. It's entirely possible that comes later in the game, I'll have to find out. Yet in the 10 missions I've played, it always ends in extermination at all costs, so I expect to see that throughout the rest of the campaign, and some variety would certainly be nice. And there's the one single campaign I briefly mentioned again. If they released a full Tyranid campaign soon, that would make the game immensely more appealing to me, and honestly should be at a very, very reduced cost, but again, that's just me. And as a player who doesn't do skirmish or multiplayer, paying $40 for a single campaign is a bit steep in my opinion, even with the potential for replayability. So here's what I can say in a sort of full confidence. If you are a single player campaign player, you're looking at a 30-hour-ish long campaign, maybe a little more if you really take your time. If you think you can get $40 worth of playtime in that, assuming you go by the dollar per hour metric like some like to play by, or even some other metric of your own, then from one single player to another, it's worth the buy based on everything I've said up to this point. If you wanted more campaigns on release or more in-depth wargaming / hardcore tabletop experiences, I don't think this is for you, at least not right at initial release. However, if you've got buddies you want to tabletop with, or just really enjoy skirmishes and multiplayer, this is 100% worth the buy, as you get a big single player campaign and access to both factions in the multiplayer scene. I can't tell you a roadmap for the game post-release as nothing has been given to me, but Black Lab Games did say they plan on expanding the Warhammer 40K world, and I'm very excited to see what that entails. Battlesector isn't the perfect 40K strategy game, but it's miles above most in the genre, just could use a bit of tweaking to make it even better. And that will be all for my review on Warhammer 40K Battlesector. I hope you have grasped a better understanding of the game before you make the decision to buy. If you do decide to purchase the game, again, consider supporting the channel by purchasing it via my Nexus game store. I would immensely appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on bell notifications. I will be streaming this game over on Twitch, most likely in a full campaign, so head over there right now and give me a follow. Links to everything will be in the description. Thank you all for tuning into this video. This is Havoc, and I will see you all in the next one.